All right, everyone. Ready to dive deep into revenue forecasting. We're going to explore those strategies and tools that can really give your sales and revenue teams a big advantage.
Sounds exciting.
I think so, and to guide us through all this, we've got Nova, our expert in all things revenue.
I'm happy to be here.
Great. Now, we like to get right to the point.
Right to it.
So we've got this recent article, Revenue Forecasting, the key to scaling your business with confidence. And it's full of great insights, especially for, those leading sales and revenue teams.
Yeah, it really emphasizes just how important, accurate forecasting is in today's business world. It's not just about, predicting numbers. It's about making smart decisions that lead to lasting growth.
Exactly. That's like having a roadmap for your business,
Yeah.
helps you navigate the terrain, avoid those unexpected bumps along the way.
Mm.
So Nova, for those who might be thinking like, okay, why should I even care about this? Let's break it down.
Okay.
What's the real value here of revenue forecasting?
A lot of people see it as, this boring administrative task. But honestly, getting your revenue forecast right can be a total game changer. Imagine knowing ahead of time that, a specific product line might not do so well, or that, entering a new market could really exceed expectations.
Right.
That kind of foresight lets you make strategic decisions about things like resource allocation, product development, even hiring.
It's about being proactive instead of always reacting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're not just talking about, some vague benefits here. There's actual research to back this up. Porn Fairy Consulting found that B2B organizations that had, structured forecasting processes, they actually saw their forecasted deal win rates jump up by 17%.
Wow, that's huge.
Right, that's significant.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
It really shows that this isn't just some theoretical concept.
Yeah,
It has a real impact on the bottom line.
absolutely. And think about this study showed that businesses with accurate forecasts are 7% more likely to actually hit their revenue targets. And then on top of that, you've got a whopping 76% of CFOs who say that accurate forecasting is essential for solid financial performance.
Okay, those numbers are pretty convincing.
Yeah,
But the question is, how do we actually make this happen in the real world?
right.
The article talks about a few key forecasting methods. Let's start with historical forecasting. What's that all about?
Okay, so historical forecasting, it's all about learning from the past to predict the future.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, if you've consistently seen your sales go up during the holiday season,
Yeah.
you can use that historical data to kind of anticipate a similar increase in the coming year.
So you're looking for those patterns that repeat themselves?
Exactly.
But what happens when things change? Like, a new competitor comes into the picture or consumer behavior shifts unexpectedly.
Right. Well, that's where the limitations of historical forecasting kind of show up. It's great when you have a stable market with consistent patterns.
Okay.
But when things get unpredictable, we need, some more dynamic methods.
So that's where approaches like bottom-up forecasting come in.
Exactly. With bottom-up forecasting, you really zoom in on all the different parts of your revenue stream. So instead of just looking at overall past sales figures, you break it down by product, by sales team, by region, even by individual customer accounts.
So it's a more detailed approach.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Imagine you're an e-commerce company that sells, a variety of products.
Okay.
With bottom-up forecasting, you'd analyze the sales trends for each product line separately to come up with a projection for each one.
Right.
Then you add up all those individual projections to create a more complete forecast.
Makes sense, especially in industries where product life cycles are different or customer preferences change really quickly.
Yeah.
It gives you a better understanding of what's driving revenue growth or decline, at a more granular level.
Right. Now, on the other hand, you have top-down forecasting, which takes a more big-picture view.
Okay.
So instead of starting with the individual components, you begin with a larger revenue goal. And then you break it down into smaller segments based on things like market size, industry growth rates, other external factors.
So if you're a company expanding into a new region, you might use top-down forecasting to estimate potential revenue based on that region's market size and your expected market share.
Exactly. It's a good approach for new ventures or strategic initiatives where you don't have a ton of historical data to rely on.
Okay, so we've got these different methodologies, but we also need to talk about the tools.
Yeah.
We're all about using technology to our advantage, right?
For sure.
The article mentioned a couple of interesting platforms like Anaplan and MeetRecord.
Yeah.
What role do tools like these play in revenue forecasting?
Oh, they can be huge game changers. These platforms provide, those real-time data insights, and they integrate with your CRM, which gives you a much clearer picture of your current sales pipeline and, potential revenue streams.
So we can ditch those spreadsheets and manual data entry?
We can definitely do better than that.
Good.
These tools, they track important metrics like deal stages, conversion rates. Right.
Customer engagement. They give you a more accurate and, dynamic view of how your sales are performing.
That's a lot to take in, Nova. Before we move on to those specific forecasting models, I want to make sure our listeners are clear on the main takeaway here.
Okay.
What are the most important points from this part of our deep dive?
I think the key takeaway is that accurate revenue forecasting, it's not just a nice thing to have. It's
Yeah.
really essential for making those informed decisions.
Yeah.
Optimizing how you allocate resources and ultimately driving profitable growth.
Mm.
We've seen that just relying on historical data can be limiting, especially in markets that are constantly changing.
Yeah.
And using technology can give us a real edge when it comes to accuracy and real-time insights.
You hit the nail on the head. Now, for those of you who are eager to learn more about those specific forecasting models, stay tuned because that's exactly what we're going to cover in the next part of our deep dive. All right, so we've talked about why revenue forecasting is so important, especially for those of you leading sales and revenue teams.
Yeah.
Now let's dig into the how-to.
The nitty-gritty. Exactly. We briefly touched on a few methods, but this article really goes deeper into some specific forecasting models that can be real game changers.
Right, and with so many models out there, it can feel overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
But don't worry, we're not going to try to cover all 8 of them.
Okay.
Instead, we'll focus on a couple that are particularly relevant, for sales and revenue leaders like you guys.
Sounds good. So which models are we focusing on today?
Let's start with pipeline forecasting. It's a favorite among sales teams.
Okay.
This model is all about analyzing the different stages in your sales process to predict that future revenue. It's kind of like taking a close look at your sales funnel and estimating how much revenue will actually come from the deals at each stage.
So we're talking about those leads that are moving from that initial contact to a qualified opportunity, then to a proposal, and finally those closed deals.
Exactly. By looking at those conversion rates, from lead to opportunity to close, businesses can get a pretty accurate prediction about how much revenue they can expect in a certain time frame. It's a really great way to see what's coming down the pipeline and, identify any potential bottlenecks or areas where you could improve.
It sounds like it's much more dynamic than just looking at past sales figures.
It is.
But how do you actually factor in the uncertainty of whether a deal will close or not?
That's where weighted pipeline forecasting comes in.
Okay.
This model takes pipeline forecasting, one step further and adds probabilities to each deal.
Okay.
So you assign a percentage chance of closing based on where the deal is in the pipeline and other factors like the deal size, competitor involvement, even the strength of the relationship you have with that potential customer.
So a deal that's in the final stages of negotiation with a high-value client that might have like a 70% chance of closing.
Right.
But a deal that's still early on, in the qualification stage, might only have a 20% chance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
By adding those probabilities, you get a much more realistic and detailed view of your pipeline, which can lead to even more accurate forecasts. This model is especially helpful for businesses with longer sales cycles.
Right.
More complex deals where, really figuring out how likely that closes is super important for projecting revenue.
It sounds like weighted pipeline forecasting can really help sales leaders prioritize their efforts and figure out how to use their resources most effectively.
Absolutely. It gives them the data they need to make smart decisions about where to focus their team's time and energy.
Now, switching gears a little bit, let's talk about a model that's super valuable for businesses that use subscription models.
Okay.
Cohort analysis. What's that all about?
All right, so cohort analysis is all about understanding how different groups of customers behave over time. So you group customers based on certain shared characteristics. Like when they were acquired the channel, they came through even their demographics. And then you analyze, their behavior patterns.
So, for example, we could take all the customers who signed up for our SaaS platform in January
Right.
and track their engagement, how they use it, their retention rates over the next few months.
Exactly. And by comparing those cohorts over time, you can start to see trends and patterns that can really inform your revenue forecasts.
Okay.
Like, let's say you notice that customers who are acquired through a specific marketing campaign, they tend to have a higher lifetime value.
Yeah.
Well, then you can adjust your acquisition strategies and your budget accordingly.
It sounds like a really powerful tool for understanding the long-term value of your customer base and predicting that future recurring revenue.
It is. It helps you predict things like churn rates, customer lifetime value,
Hmm.
even how effective your customer success initiatives are. It gives you a deeper understanding of how your relationships with customers change over time and how that impacts your profits.
This is all really interesting, Nova, but with so many models out there, it can be hard to know where to even start.
Sure.
How do our listeners figure out which model is the right fit for their business?
Yeah, that's the big question. The ideal model, it really depends on a few things, like your business model, how complex your sales process is,
Okay.
the quality of your data, even the specific questions that you're trying to answer.
So there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Not really. Sometimes it might even make sense to combine multiple models,
Hmm.
to get a more well-rounded and accurate picture. It's all about understanding the strengths and the weaknesses of each approach
Yeah.
and choosing the one that aligns best with your needs and goals.
I appreciate you pointing that out, Nova. It's easy to get excited about new tools and methods,
It is.
but the key is to pick what's right for your specific situation.
Exactly.
Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, are there any key takeaways you want to emphasize for our listeners?
Definitely. I think the main takeaway is that there are several really strong forecasting models out there, each with its own, pros and cons.
Okay.
Pipeline forecasting helps you analyze that sales funnel, while weighted pipeline forecasting adds that extra layer of probability to get more realistic predictions. And then cohort analysis helps you understand that customer behavior over time to predict that recurring revenue.
Excellent points.
Mm.
And for our listeners, remember choosing the right model depends on your unique business needs and your goals. Don't be afraid to experiment and find what works best for you. Now, in the final part of our deep dive, we'll shift gears and explore some practical tips and best practices for improving your forecasting accuracy and taking your revenue predictions to the next level. All right, so we've explored these, powerful forecasting models, but honestly, even the most, sophisticated model is only as good as the data it's using and the people, actually using it.
Right.
So, Nova, what are some practical tips to make sure we're getting the most accurate forecasts we can?
You're absolutely right. Data quality and human insights are so important.
Yeah.
One of the most important things you can do is to set up a consistent forecasting process. It's like working out a muscle.
Hmm.
You got to train it regularly to get the best results. So stick with the forecasting method you choose, for a few quarters, track your results carefully, and then refine your approach as you get more data and experience.
Yeah, consistency makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's easy to jump around from one method to another,
It is.
but that can create more confusion than anything.
Exactly. And speaking of clarity, let's talk about data.
Okay.
The article really emphasizes data-driven decision-making, and there's a good reason for that.
Right.
Garbage in, garbage out, as they say.
Uh-huh.
So make sure you're collecting accurate, real-time data from all the right places.
So like integrating our CRM marketing automation platforms and any other systems that capture valuable sales and customer data.
Exactly. Tools like MeetRecord and Salesforce can be super helpful for this. They give you those real-time insights into your sales pipeline and customer interactions.
Okay.
This helps get rid of the guesswork and make sure your forecasts are based on, solid data, not just gut feelings.
Okay.
Data is definitely key. But even with, perfect data and consistent processes, things can still go wrong. What about those unexpected external factors that can really mess up our predictions?
Right. Well, that's where being agile and adaptable comes in.
Okay.
No forecast is perfect.
Yeah.
The market is always changing, and unexpected things happen, economic downturns, new competitors, global pandemics even.
Right.
The key is to build flexibility into your forecasting process and be ready to adjust when you need to.
So we should be regularly revisiting and revising our forecasts based on, new information and how the market's doing.
Absolutely. And that's where working together becomes even more important. Break down those silos between sales, marketing, and finance.
Yeah.
Each team has its own, unique insights and perspectives that can help you see potential risks and opportunities that you might not see just from the data alone.
So it's about having those open conversations and being willing to challenge those assumptions. Exactly. And don't forget to use technology to help with this collaborative process. Things like shared dashboards, real-time reporting, communication platforms can help keep everyone on the same page and make it easier to make decisions based on the data.
Okay, Nova, this has been a really insightful deep dive into the world of revenue forecasting. As we wrap up, what are the top 3 things our listeners should take away from this?
All right, so first, consistency is key. Set up a structured forecasting process and stick with it, refine it as you go.
Yeah.
Second, data is your foundation. Make sure you're collecting accurate, real-time data from all the important sources
Hmm.
and use technology to help you understand it all. And finally, be collaborative and flexible. Break down those barriers between teams and be ready to adapt your forecasts based on new information and how the market is changing.
Great advice. And for our listeners, remember that getting good at revenue forecasting is about more than just predicting the future. It's about actually shaping that future so you can achieve sustainable growth and success. So go out there, use what you've learned, and watch your business thrive. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.